It all began with a commanding shout that sliced through the hum of conversation like a razor blade. "Hands where I can see them." Now, forks froze midway to mouths, cups trembled on saucers, and the familiar buzz of the local diner collapsed into stunned silence. The old man sitting alone in the corner booth didn't flinch. He merely lifted his gaze, slow and steady, as if he had seen storms far worse than this one brewing. Two white police officers barged into the room, sending chairs scraping against the checkered tile floor. Their boots thudded heavily with authority, their presence hostile and uninvited. Sergeant Troy Maddox, a grizzled officer with a jaw clenched too tight, barked again, pointing straight at the black man at the booth. "You. Up. Now. You fit the description." The man blinked once, calm as a pond at dawn. He reached for the weathered walking stick propped beside him and said, his voice rough with age but iron strong, "Son, you're barking up the wrong tree." Maddox wasn't listening. His partner, Officer Dean Carter, a hothead barely old enough to shave, was already yanking a pair of cuffs from his belt. "Stand up, or I'll drag you out myself," Maddox snarled. The man's name was Mr. Elijah Brooks. He was 74 years old, a fixture in the neighborhood, as familiar as the cracked sidewalks and sun-bleached mailboxes. Every Tuesday, he strolled to Rosie's Diner, took his usual booth by the window, ordered a cup of black coffee and a slice of warm cornbread. Never once had he caused trouble. But today, the world had turned upside down. Without warning, Maddox shoved Mr. Brooks against the faded wall, knocking his walking stick clattering to the floor. A ripple of outrage passed through the diner. Cell phones emerged from pockets. A young woman gasped, "That's Mr. Brooks. He's a war veteran." The officers didn't care. Carter wrenched Elijah's arms behind his back with brutal efficiency. The old man winced, his injured shoulder, a lingering wound from Vietnam, flaring in agony. Yet he said nothing. He simply fixed Maddox with a gaze that had once stared down artillery fire and whispered, "You boys are making a hell of a mistake." Carter laughed. "You got drugs on you, old man. Warrants? Better fess up." Elijah shook his head slowly. "All I got, son, are honor medals and a clean conscience." They dragged him out like a common criminal, tossing his walking stick aside like garbage. Shoved into the back of the cruiser, his face pressed against the window, Mr. Brooks remained silent. His dignity, however battered, was unbroken. At the precinct, the humiliation deepened. They threw him into a holding cell without reading him his rights. No phone call. No explanations. Maddox filed a report filled with lies, claims of resistance, of belligerence. Carter chimed in, insisting the old man match the description of a robbery suspect. They laughed it off behind closed doors. "Who's gonna believe his story?" Maddox sneered. "He looks like every old fool from the projects." What they didn't know was that, even as they joked, a teenager from the diner had uploaded the video online. The caption was simple and damning. "Local hero manhandled by cops. Do you know this man?" Within minutes, the footage spread like wildfire. 20 miles away, in a federal building lined with glass and marble, a woman's phone buzzed. Special Agent in Charge Simone Harper glanced at the notification, froze, and then rose to her feet in a blur of motion. Her heart skipped. The name across the screen, Elijah Brooks, meant everything. Inside the grimy cell, Mr. Brooks sat quietly, rubbing the tender spots on his wrist where the cuffs had bitten too deep. A rookie officer, passing by, sneered through the bars. "Got family, old man." Elijah offered a faint, knowing smile. "I've got people, and they don't take kindly to nonsense." The officer chuckled and wandered off, oblivious to the storm about to descend. Because Mr. Elijah Brooks wasn't just some aging veteran. He was a decorated hero of 3 wars, Vietnam, Desert Storm, and Operation Iraqi Freedom. A former covert operative who had trained generations of soldiers. And, most critically, a godfather and mentor to Simone Harper, the newly appointed head of the FBI's Special Investigations Unit. At that very moment, Simone was assembling a team. Meanwhile, in the back room of the station, Maddox and Carter continued their mockery. "You see his face when we cuffed him? Man looked like he was gonna cry." "Yeah, probably thinks he's still in Nam," Carter jeered. The front doors burst open before they could laugh any harder. 3 gleaming black SUVs had screeched to a stop outside. Men and women in tailored dark suits flooded the station, their movements sharp and decisive. At the reception desk, a young officer stammered, See, can I help you? Simone Harper flashed her badge, her voice cold as ice. FBI, where is Elijah Brooks? Maddox swaggered into the lobby, smirking. Who's asking? Simone stepped closer, close enough that Maddox had no choice but to notice the fire in her eyes. I'm his goddaughter. Now get out of my way. The smirk evaporated. Maddox stammered. We had cause. He fit a description. You had no warrant, Simone snapped. No probable cause. No reading of rights. No humanity. Her agents fanned out, securing body camera footage, pulling reports, examining every second of security video. Simone marched past Maddox and Carter without a second glance. She stopped at the cell and called softly, Uncle Eli? Elijah looked up and smiled, a weary but warm expression. Hey there, pumpkin. Simone swallowed the lump in her throat and ordered, Open this door. Now. Keys fumbled in trembling hands. As the lock clanked open, Simone stepped forward to steady Mr. Brooks. You all right? She whispered. I've survived worse, Elijah murmured. But these boys? They're about to learn a hard lesson. 30 minutes later, the precinct was unrecognizable. Agents filled every hallway. Simone stood in the center, her voice ringing out like a gavel in a courtroom. Sergeant Troy Maddox. Officer Dean Carter. You are under federal investigation for unlawful arrest, excessive force, falsifying official documents, and racial profiling. Maddox's face turned ashen. You can't be serious. We thought. You thought wrong. Simone interrupted coldly. This man is a national treasure. You treated him like refuse. Carter tried to slip away, but 2 agents blocked the door. I was just following orders, he stammered. Simone's glare could have frozen lava. That excuse didn't work in Nuremberg. It won't work here. Outside, the crowd had swelled. Protesters waved signs. News vans circled like vultures. Veterans in crisp uniforms stood shoulder to shoulder, silent but seething. The mayor showed up, face red with shame. So did the chief of police, forced into a stammering apology broadcast live across the nation. Mr. Brooks said little. He stood beside Simone, his back straight, his silence louder than any speech. When asked by a reporter what he wanted, he simply said, I don't want revenge. I want respect. But justice arrived anyway. Maddox and Carter were let out in cuffs, their heads bowed, their careers destroyed. Flashbulbs exploded like fireworks. Somewhere, the sound of an honor salute echoed faintly, as if the universe itself was setting the balance right. Simone turned to her godfather and smiled. Come on, Uncle Eli. Let's get you that cornbread. And don't forget the coffee, he chuckled, a sound rich with survival and triumph. When Mr. Brooks stepped back into Rosie's diner that afternoon, the entire place rose to their feet. Applause thundered against the walls. His booth had been reserved. His coffee was steaming, waiting. His cornbread was warm and sweet. And that day, across America, people watched and remembered. They saw how easily dignity could be stolen. But more importantly, they saw what happens when justice walks through the door 30 minutes later, wearing a badge that actually means something.